Alright, we're good.
Be like,
Bussin' with the boys, hanging with the fellas, betting on a game. No woman's gonna tell us what to do, and I've been over here just drinking beer and making that noise. Baby, I'm hanging with the fellas, bussin' with the boys.
Bro.
As Will Compton clears his throat, I want to welcome everyone to another episode of Bussin' with the Boys. It is episode 287, and if you are joining us for the first time, you're about to find out. If you've been joining us for a long time, you already know that we are a Chevy podcast. Gentlemen, get ready because this is a Sport Clip ad, so I need to see Chevy Silverado.
You know what? Let's back up.
Let's back up. Yep.
Let's take a
reset.
moment.
It's been a long couple of days.
Yeah, reset the
It's been
entire
a long
practice.
couple of days.
Let's reset the entire practice.
Do you mind clearing your throat for me real quick?
Let's reset.
We're resetting. As Will Compton reset again. Reset again. Had a false start right after a big mess. As Will Compton clears his throat and we get into this episode, I want to let everybody know that this is episode 287. And if you're joining us for the first time, you're about to find out. And if you've been with us for a long time, you already know that we are a Chevy podcast. Bussin' with the Boys is presented by Chevy. This is a Chevy podcast, the greatest trucks ever built, and our good friends at Chevrolet have been a big part of the Bussin' family and even our personal lives. The boy to my right here has a ZR2. It's a very beautiful truck. Chevy Silverado, longtime awesome partner of the show, a truck with commanding and unstoppable grit, legendary capability, and dependability too. So find out for yourself, dude. Like so many of our boys. Head to Chevy.com, check out all the Chevy trucks, grit, and build your own Silverado. For do-it-yourself projects to off-road trips, to road trips, off-road adventures, to tailgates, whatever your thing is, it all starts with a Chevy Silverado. And that's how you start a podcast.
It is.
A lot of people want to do it and they want to cut that out. We don't do that here at Bussin' with the Boys.
Right. And if you are watching and newly tuned in to Bussin' with the Boys.
Which I'm assuming a lot of people are.
Yeah. We had a big dog.
Big dog.
We had a big dog.
Big dog.
But make sure you are subscribed. Hit that little subscribe
Right.
button for the boys. I want to say JP threw a stat out there, the separation and people that actually view our show, even reoccurring fans that view our show, and the subscriber rate. There's like a massive gap, right? Isn't it like north of 50%?
On one particular video, it was 75% people were unsubscribed to the channel that watched it.
Yeah. Make sure you're subscribed to the boys. I know, hey, we're a male dominated podcast, so I know the boys, the fellas out there can forget to do stuff. They got to get reminded all the time. So you got to just drill it in their head. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're subscribed.
Speaking of forgetting to do stuff or forgetting things in general, I forgot my valet ticket at BNA. And you would have thought it was Fort Knox. And a lot of people are here for RFK, obviously, but you're going to hear this is a bit of a therapy session as well for me because last couple of days, dude, we flew to Detroit, from Detroit, flew to Houston, from Houston, flew back to Nashville. It was, up late, up early type of things, burning the candle at both ends in the sense of not getting a whole lot of sleep. So we are sitting in Houston, so ready to be home.
So excited.
Again,
like you said, we're landing every night at probably midnight.
Yeah.
Getting to the hotel, waking up early.
Yeah, let's just say 6, even though it's probably
Maybe
like
5,
7. Yeah,
probably 5.
we got 4:30 before, right around the times.
And I always wake up before just to compete with Jocko Willink.
Yeah, I have to.
Yeah.
I have to. Someone's got to take that man down.
Yeah.
You're the man to do it. So you can imagine I'm a little bit tired at this point. I get to the BNA, which is the Nashville Airport Valet, and this guy sitting in front of me. I say, hey, listen, I lost my ticket. But in my head, I've lost my ticket a dozen times. It's not been a big deal ever.
Oh, really?
No, it's
I've
not.
done it before, and I will never do it again.
Okay, because that must have been what happened to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm talking to a lady. She's like, hey, unless like the registration matches your address or the name on it, we're not going to be able to give you the vehicle. And I'm like, all good, bring it up. I have the registration. It's under one of my LLCs, but I have the same address on it. It should be no problem. She was fine. The guy behind her, who thought he was literally the king of all valets to ever rule valets, goes, we're not giving you the vehicle. He allows me to go in the vehicle. I pull out a sign that you go get my kids for pickup. It says Lawan on it. My card says Lawan. My license says Lawan. I pull out the registration, same address as my driver's license, and he's just not having it. And I to the point.
Whoa, what do you mean he's not having it? Why
He
would
will not let me take the vehicle.
Why would he not be like, okay, this all makes sense?
You will get him on the bus and ask him.
Okay.
Because I go,
Next
bro.
guest.
I go, bro. I have the app on my phone. It's a Tesla. It's my wife's car. I can just watch. I turn the horn on and the horn honked.
And what is his response?
He's like, sorry, unless your name on the registration is the same. I was like, my name is not No Bad Days. What do you mean? It's no one's name is No Bad Days. And he's giving me a hard time, blah, blah, blah. And I go, bro, are you fucking serious? That loud. Bro, are you fucking serious?
You know it's getting real.
Yes, and listen.
Because it's not like a Taylor move. Like, you can tell when he's mad, but it's never direct. Are you fucking serious?
And especially in public. And the thing, too, dude, there's 2 or 3 people back there being like, tapping him and being like, hey, that's Taylor. Like, he played for the Titans and he's got a podcast, Bussin with the Boys. Like, there's a couple guys in the back that work for him that are kind of like being for the boy. But I'm not. The only thing I'm thinking in my head is like police videos when they're like, I play for so-and-so. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not. Buddy ends up calling the police.
Did you show him the Wikipedia?
What?
Did you show him your
No, I
Wikipedia?
didn't show him the Wikipedia. I learned my lesson with that. But got to set up a ticket.
Yeah.
He calls the police. And I'm here for 30 minutes. I'm on FaceTime with my wife. I'm like, dude, he won't just let me go. And I told him, I was like, what if I just get in my car and leave? He goes, we'll impound the car. I was like, I'll just get in the car and leave then. Like, I have the app. He's like, we won't give you the key. I was like, I have the app. He looks at his boy and does
It's a Tesla.
Bro.
I don't need the key.
He looks at his boy and goes, park it. His boy scurries out the door and goes in, parks the car, pulls it, and you see him like, you know how it's like, there's lanes?
Yeah.
He goes the farthest lane away, and I see the car's like, a damn near half a mile at this point. It is so far away.
Oh my goodness,
bro. I am fuming. His manager comes down. His manager and him were aligned on hating me. It was some small little girl, and I was like, hey, how you doing? And she just gave me like the nod, no smile, no facial expression.
We're taking your big ass down.
Yeah,
tonight.
I'm thinking, what are we doing? And then the cop pulls up, opens the door, looks at me, and just smiles and shrugs his shoulders. He's like, hey, for the boys. And I was like, yeah, can you... Like,
Let's go.
And I'm like telling him, like, bro, I am pretty upset right now, but like, I just want. He's like, we'll get you out of here. Don't worry. They take 15 more minutes just to get the vehicle.
Sickening. Oh,
dude,
that is so tough.
And I'm in my head, I'm like, I'm not tipping nothing. But this little dude went back and forth like 4 times, so I threw him a little cash. I handed him a little cash, but I didn't want to make sure it wasn't on the car because I don't know if they're divvying those tips up. I want him specifically to have that money.
That's what I was going to ask you about. Like the lady. They had two of them going. So if you're walking this way, not the lady here, but going around the corner and getting that window.
Yeah, I was first window.
Gotcha.
I didn't take the extra 3 steps.
I went extra 3 steps because somebody was in line, but they went to get the truck and I don't think I said anything. That's why I feel like I got hustled and I was curious what happened with you. But she goes, you said you want to tip 10? And so I just said yes. And then I was like, I think she just fucking got me.
I wasn't caring. I really
was.
And I legit, I didn't hit the classic phrase of I want to talk to your manager. I think, but here's what Buddy did. He started talking to me like he had an accent on him, but he was like pronunciating it was words well, very easy and clear. As soon as there was a confrontation, all of a sudden he had a way stronger accent and he would just repeat things. He was trying to play me. Like I already heard you talking good English, brother. Like, dude, I was so mad. Literally was at the B&A Valley area for 45 minutes, maybe an hour.
That's tough, man. I'm sorry you went through that.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
I got the car and drove off.
Your phone.
Oh, yeah. Dude. So when I hit him with are you fucking serious? I like kind of put my hand out. I went like that. And the phone was on that little counter and it hit. Fell. And that's where, dude, I got this phone a week ago. A week ago.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
That's brutal.
And that sent me over the edge too because I went to go pick it up and I thought it was gonna be fine. I turned it over and I saw it and that sent me into a new atmosphere of mad. But that's where I just ended up getting quiet because I was mad, dude. I made a couple of sly comments.
It's a great mix of that's everybody else's fault that just happened, but also that's my fault.
Like in your mind at the moment, it's everyone's fault. As soon as you get in the car and drive off, you're like, you're an idiot, dude. Just like you had to be that aggressive with your arm movement. But the cop was a homie, dude. Shout out the cops, dude. Shout out the cops if you're listening.
You got to believe that O's the mentalist would get out of that situation. You'd be like, hey, check your pocket.
No
Your registration's there.
No question. No question. But yeah, I really wanted to tell that story because it was heavy on my heart.
But hey, a great week overall.
Great week overall. Great week. We had RFK on.
Yeah, O's came out. We had the beer games. All 3 episodes of the beer games are out.
Mm-hmm. And if you're a person that is watching RFK for the politics, beer games, we do it all here.
Yeah.
I guess we do it all.
If you are unaware of what we are talking about, name change was the Beer Olympics. We had to change to the beer games, obviously copyright and everything else going on. But we have 3 episodes of the Beer Games Championships of the World. It took place in Taylor, Lewan, our boys' backyard. Yes, we are the champions. Yes, we won the whole thing. There were 16 teams. We took home the trophy. But those are out on our YouTube channel as well. RFK, we had a massive opportunity to come up to interview RFK. He came on the bus. Secret Service was coming in days in advance. Dogs coming in to
snipers on the roof.
Everything. Snipers on the roof. Way better setup than what Trump had at his rally.
And dude, yeah, if you're coming on this show to listen to like politics and us go back and forth,
you came to the right place.
You came to the wrong place.
We asked a lot of political questions.
We start off talking about that stuff, but really
he even joked on it, said, "I know you guys don't like to talk politics." Going off of our political questions.
Yeah, we said that, but yes, he goes, "We won't talk about politics then." But it was truly like a story time. It was learning about the Kennedy family. Him talking about his uncle being on an island and then riding on a coconut coordinates, and that's how he got saved. And then once his inauguration was taking place, he invited those guys, but they didn't represent that country well enough, so they sent 2 other guys.
Yeah,
it was just an amazing podcast, one that I really really enjoyed.
He's an incredible storyteller.
He really is.
He's very good at starting on one topic, then you completely end up somewhere else. I did ask him what he thought about the Washington Commanders name change, so we will dive into that.
I thought he handled that really well too.
Yeah,
like a true politician.
Yeah,
because you know what he really wants.
I think you can figure out that, he talked about empathizing with that community and everything else, but he was said,
Yeah. Vague. Gotta be vague. Gotta be vague. People don't want to hear us say it. They want to hear him say it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we got today.
Did you see the opening ceremony with the Olympics?
I saw a couple clips and people were pretty upset. I saw that there was like a Smurf and a dish. But we were at the airport, so I really didn't hear any of the volume, and I didn't decide to go look. A lot
of satanic rituals, some would say.
Really?
There's this lady on fire. She's like holding her head. She's headless. There's this pale horse running across with death on its back.
The word death?
Well, it's like a call to. There's a spot in the Bible in Revelations, right? Mm-hmm. A pale horse with death riding on its back or from behind or whatever it is, and they're kind of doing that. They also mimic They also mess with the Last Supper.
Really?
Yeah, and it's like drag queens, and I mean the first person they showed doesn't necessarily represent the Olympics.
So
we're talking about peak athleticism, and
and the guy that
you guys we'll show the visuals. So I have to verbally get aggressive.
The guy that put it on is in charge of organizing the whole opening ceremony. He's Jewish. Which adds a whole nother layer to the underlying.
There's some
intentions.
Conspiracies going on.
Love a tinfoil hat day.
This is a prime tinfoil hat ceremony. Like this is where something like that gets the crowd going.
Mm-hmm. What I don't want to talk out of my ass, but when the Romans, they started the Olympics, correct? Greeks, excuse me. Thank you, Sherman. Wow, that's a tough L. But they had like very crazy opening ceremonies even then, right? So maybe this is them just kind of going back to their roots in a lot of ways, even though this is in France.
Keep your eye on.
You be on that side, we'll be on this side.
Yeah. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Keep your eye on Taylor over the next few years.
So this voluptuous lady in the middle here is supposed to be Jesus?
I don't know.
I mean, she's in the spot.
Yeah, I guess so.
She's in the spot.
Just a very interesting ceremony.
Okay.
I probably won't watch one event now.
Except swimming.
Yeah.
Except swimming.
And the 100-meter dash.
And Dominican versus Brazil beach volleyball.
Yeah. Just the things. Team USA basketball. I will watch swimming. I'll watch swimming for the people out there. To hating it. Thanks to I just think swimming.
Greeks used to do it naked. Little known fact. Every event.
Bring it back.
Tradition.
Bring it back, dude. Let's get tradition.
The French would be the ones to bring that back.
A horrible
Dude,
running form in that photo you just showed too.
I hope
Foot's on dorsiflex, bad angles.
Yeah.
No power angles there. You see that?
I hope so badly that South Park
Oh, they're gonna
makes fun of it.
South Park does an amazing job.
Prime
of making
time
fun
spot.
of current events.
Prime time spot.
They do a great job. Finnebaum, dude.
Yeah, Finnybaum.
What's the deal? He was coming at Michigan last year. Now he set his sights on Nebraska.
Did he come at Michigan last year?
Yeah, he called them like a second tier team in the SEC. He's essentially
Seems like he was wrong about that too.
Yeah. And what was the situation with you?
He
and
was
Finnebaum?
talking about don't worry about the big boys at the top. You act like you're speaking like you said at the table with Ohio State and Georgia. You do not. Then he took a personal shot at Matt Rule's NFL coaching years with the Panthers. A personal shot.
Personal.
In my opinion,
What was the
quote? It was unnecessary to go after the boy Coach Rule and bring that up.
Yeah.
I get the fun chirps. Listen, Finnybaum, he's playing a heady play right there because you know that kind of take galvanizes the Nebraska fan base.
Yeah,
like you talk about Nebraska, you're gonna that's like talking about the Cowboys in the NFL.
Yeah. Well, all right. I mean, regardless of the state of the Nebraska football program and what they're in right now, the fan base does go extremely hard.
Right. We win every poll out
boards,
there, every social media poll out there. We're the national champions of social
media.
They have
polls. Everywhere we go, bones are being thrown, black shirts, all that talk, go big red.
Yeah.
They really roll deep.
And you witness somebody like Finnybaum doing that, and he's just like, this is a dying gazelle in the safari talking like he's some lion. You know what I mean?
No, but go ahead and elaborate a little more. You saying the Nebraska Cornhuskers are going to eat him alive?
No, I'm saying Paul Finnybaum himself in this game
is a gazelle.
Yeah, he's a dying gazelle in the safari.
Oh,
pretending to speak for the Lions. You know what I mean? You're not hanging out with the big boys,
right?
You're not.
You're
not even close to the.
He runs back and forth, and he just pretends like he's a part of the crew, and really they just make him do little tricks for him.
Yes,
he's the younger brother of the older brother.
Exactly.
That's tough, Finnebaum.
Smeagol looking ass dude.
Get his ass, Will. Man,
dude looks like a javelin. I could throw 20 yards at least.
Man.
Before we get off the Olympics, that could be a tier talk. Do we want to tier talk Olympic events? Favorite Olympic events? Field events, whether it's swimming, whether it's...
And it can be both winter and summer?
Oh, you want to throw winter? Maybe we just do summer because it's the Summer Olympics.
Okay, let's do Summer Olympics. Give me 2 minutes.
What's your favorite winter Olympic event?
Probably hockey.
Hockey. Okay. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I just saw Miracle, dude. Miracle? You seen that movie?
Oh yeah. yeah. If you have not, you should get checked on your citizenship. Yeah, again, what a scene. Would be tough to be one of the boys.
I watched the state championship of Friday Night Lights on the plane ride home. I had like 20 minutes left. I'm like, let me just get juiced up.
Yes. I'll rip it first.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna go tier 3. Hurdles. Hurdles. Your boy took home the gold in districts in 8th grade. I was a decent little sportsman at hurdles. I enjoy watching it.
What distance?
100-meter hurdles, or 110.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 110, yeah. But the hurdles, the 110-meter dash. Not the long one. I think they do like a long one where it's like 300-meter hurdles, possibly. Does that sound right?
That is right.
Okay.
At high school level, 300. At professional level, 400.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Gotcha.
Fun fact.
My
tier 2 is going to go to the high jump. Enjoy a good high jump. Yes, I will bring this back to me. Your boy holds the middle school record for high jump at 5 feet 11 inches.
Wow.
5 feet 11 inches in 8th grade. Yes, your boy has the record.
We have bunnies.
And bunnies. Well, what's up, Mitch? Did you do the high jump?
No, but in 8th grade, you're jumping 6 feet.
I said 5'11",
which is
close. I didn't get 6.
I think 5'11". I saw somebody do at Michigan, and he won.
Yeah,
that Big Ten match.
Boys, I promise.
I think it's 4'11".
No, I'm scissor kicking 4'11". Scissor kicking. That's where you don't even have to bend backwards. You just jump up and clear it.
I know what scissor kicking is.
Okay, I just wanted to.
But
the people might not know. The people might not know.
I don't think. I'm 95% sure I was at a Michigan track and field event, and it was a Big Ten event, and somebody jumped 5'11" and won.
A Michigan person, whoever. Number one, this must be like There are no athletes. If somebody jumping 5'11" wins
Can
a
you
Big
look
Ten,
that up?
it's not, bro.
The world record's like 8'4".
Yeah, the high school record at
So
my
in middle
high school
Will
was
3 feet
6'7".
away.
The high school record at my high school is like 6'7". So 5'11" is like obviously for an 8th grader, bunnies.
Okay, 7 feet 5 inches won the Big Ten this year.
This
Yeah.
year, but different athletes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe he's
Mitch,
right.
you look
Maybe he's
hater
right.
right now, bro.
Maybe he's right.
Did you run track and field in middle school?
Yeah, Mitch is bad. I too couldn't handle that, dude.
My tier 1 though, it could be, and it could be unanimous across the board. My tier 1 is that 100-meter dash. I think that just watching the race for the fastest human being in the world. 200's cool, 400's cool, distance not cool at all, but claiming that you are the one, bro. Like imagine being Usain Bolt.
Yeah. Fastest man in the world.
In the world. And everybody and that's the one event that everybody I feel like asks about, like, hey, what day's the 100-meter dash happening? Because I feel like you have the most viewership there. So my tier 1 is the 100-meter dash. And that concludes my tier talk.
Like that.
Yeah, 4x1's fun.
The 100-meter dash is just built into us since we're little kids.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Or like when the minute you realize that competition exists, the first competition I think we ever participated in is a race against our friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And when you're
Finding out who the
fastest,
fastest is.
yeah, when you're fast in the elementary school,
You're the
it's a
coolest kid in
wrap.
school.
You are
Yeah.
a king,
You're the
bro.
coolest kid in school.
And it's funny too because it never even goes to a thought of let's run a longer distance.
Oh,
Like you're just
no.
thinking let's race
To that
And it's-
pole.
Yeah, let's race to that pole. It's just an all-out sprint.
I loved yours because they were one word, excellent.
Thank you. That fires me up. Let's go, hater Mitch.
Bunnies.
All right.
Locked in.
speed.
Yeah, I really liked yours because they were like all,
Speed.
They were all like the classics.
Yeah.
You hit all the classics. I was looking at the list as you were doing your tier talk. My tier 3 is gonna go to. I'm gonna give a tip of the cap to the old lineman, man. It's gonna go to shot put.
Sorry,
Just
no
boys,
disrespect.
No. Just boys in a small circle, launching a ball as far as they can, grunting at the end, throwing it out. That's real power right there.
Yeah.
My tier 2 is gonna go to, which I just found out on this little list, skateboarding. I didn't know skateboarding was an Olympic event, and sometimes every time skateboarding is on TV, whether it's X Games or some other little thing, I always watch it. I don't know anything about skateboarding now other than Nigel Houston. That's it. And then my tier 1 is going to go to the 100-meter dash. That's where boys become men right there.
Yeah.
That's where you separate the lions from the sheep, the Finnebaums from the Comptons.
You guys start with the one word. I don't think I have mine. Mine was going to be misfits. Shot put, skateboarding. But then you go with the 100 meters. So now I got to think about my word.
Creative.
Different.
On brand.
Range.
Thank you. I'll take all that, boys. I'll take all that. Do we want to just let these people get to this episode?
I think so. No, we don't. We don't need twisted. We told them our twisted question was the microphone. 60 seconds.
Oh, that's right.
You
Nice.
got that one in there too.
Hell yeah.
Hey, you did a great job
Of what?
of kind of starting the conversation with RFK.
How nervous were you?
I sat here.
I was so nervous. And before,
Yeah.
when the Secret Service was starting to pile in and all that, I wasn't nervous. But when the door opened and he was on the phone, and we kind of did the walk up and he gave us the finger real quick, nerves
way
out
back
the
then.
ass, dude.
Bro, yeah, I mean, I was nervous as that was starting to like happen. I was excited to get it. I'm more so thinking like, I wonder what angle or where we're going to kind of start the conversation. Because we were going small talk. I think we put in a coffee order and then it kind of naturally started flowing. But I was more coming down from, I was most nervous standing out there when the Secret Service is entering and it felt like, oh shit, this is real. Like this is
Yeah.
a massive deal.
And like the Secret Service, like there was one guy in the back of the bus who was watching that back door, and I went up and introduced myself to him, and he was like, "Nice to meet you," and then stood.
Yeah.
I was
They
like,
don't break
man.
character.
They don't?
Except for,
Doug?
oh yeah.
Oh,
Doug's
the
man.
21-year-old kid.
But Doug, we got to know Doug a little bit. Doug, I was fired up because at the end, the first day he was here, he was more like that guy you were talking about. Doug was. But then at the end, Doug was more relaxed, more laid back, felt comfortable.
I love that.
Us.
I love that.
But man, I hate that we're forgetting old buddy's name, the 21-year-old. Jackson. Good pull, Mitch. Good pull. Shout out to boy Jackson. And then there was a Husker fan in there too. He said, hey, you mind if I get a photo?
That's awesome. Yeah, they had a good crew with them. A good crew. And it was a great conversation. I hope everybody I'm interested to see how this whole thing's received.
It'll be mixed. You know how it is.
It's always a mixed bag.
You can't make
it's always a mixed bag. A couple people in those comments.
Yeah, but what do you do, man? We're having a conversation. We're hanging out with
Can't have conversation with people? Trying to silence us?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
We asked about the middle class.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We talked about the majority of the people.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. We also tried talking sports.
Tried.
Oh, what the big part that sucked about this? Just calling a little timeout. Was when we were like, we didn't know it was going to be a capped interview. And then it was like, hey, you guys only have 15 minutes left. Because there were so many things we wanted to dive into. A lot more like fun questions on the back end. And kind of more personal questions, stuff like that. I think that would have been... The interview was awesome. But it sucked that we couldn't... Because he's a very good storyteller.
Yeah.
He tells a lot of stories. We don't really get a lot of questions in there.
It reminded me a little bit of Stu.
Yeah.
How you kind of sat back and you listen, you're just mesmerized by the amount of stories he's telling.
Could have easily went 3 hours.
Easily went 3 hours. And he had juice the whole entire time.
Mm-hmm.
It was awesome to see. So why don't you hit this little ad and we'll get him out. We'll get him off.
Boys, are you not playing best ball at DraftKings? Well, you're missing out, and here's what you need to know. DraftKings Best Ball Millionaire Contest is their biggest fantasy contest ever. We are talking $15 million guaranteed in prize pool money with two millionaires being crowned for first and second place. If you're a set it and forget it type, then best ball is for you because there are no waiver wires, no roster management, bigger rosters so injuries won't end your season, only the draft, and that is it. You are set for the season, and if you're still not convinced, check this out, boys. This year, DraftKings is offering everyone a draft one, get one special. Your $20 entry fee scores you a bonus ticket. Get in on all the best ball action. Download the DraftKings app and use code BUS. That is code BUS for all customers who enter the NFL Best Ball $15 million millionaire contest to get a bonus ticket and get a shot at being crowned one of two millionaires only on DraftKings. Without further ado, this is the RFK Jr. episode.
So that's the Kennedy compound. I grew up there. There's 105 Kennedys who live in that town. And, we do sports all day.
Yeah.
And I have 7 kids, and they have, 100 cousins in that town. So it's all like on the water.
That's a massive family.
Yeah.
I have a brother. That is it. that is all. That's wild. Are we rolling?
No,
Mitchie?
we
Where
don't
are you?
get to until we have a notary needs to come by.
So, or can you roll and then we can pause?
Yep.
Yeah, we can roll and pause.
Let's do that.
Because you know how the small talk goes. Small talk's the best part of the podcast. We'll sit there, we'll become great friends, then all of a sudden we'll be like, so let's start.
And then and everybody freezes up.
Yeah, and then it's not organic. I'm going to be honest with you. So we want to call Robert?
Mr. Robert
Kennedy
Jr.?
Yeah, you don't drink this at all, do you?
No.
That's body wash. That's some
that's
good
body
can.
wash.
No, I'm Bobby.
Bobby?
Yeah.
And your son is also Bobby.
I have a son, Bobby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's B3.
Yeah,
E3.
that's how we all got connected.
How do you know that? Oh, through him?
Yeah, I was put in contact with Bobby, and we got on the phone and started talking. And he's like, I was put in a situation where it's like you kind of just take phone calls and you're trying to figure out what you can do for each other, kind of a networking situation. And we started talking. I was like, hey, I have this podcast called Bussin with the Boys. Would love to have your father on. And he's calm, cool, collected. Like, yeah, we can answer that question for you, no problem. The answer is yes. And so I took his contact, gave it to our EP, who's Steven. And Steven's not here. He's actually in Italy right now and got this whole thing done. So we really appreciate you coming on. This is awesome.
I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah.
My son Bobby is married to a woman whose maiden name was Amaryllis Fox. She is now my campaign manager.
Mm-hmm.
So, and she was she went to Oxford, and then she had a theology degree from Georgetown. And she, after 9/11, she went into the CIA. She was in the clandestine services in the weapons of mass destruction program, and she was serving in China and Pakistan, all over the Mideast. And, got dissolute. She actually was married. She had what they call a commercial cover, which is that you're pretending to operate a business. And her business was originally, their first business was an art dealer. The CIA investment fund in QTEL gives you seed money to start the business, but then you actually have to run it. Mm-hmm. And she had a fake husband who was also a spy, with whom she had a child who is now 16 years old.
So I hate to cut you off, but she had a fake husband.
Yeah, I heard fake husband.
And
let's not get scared to forget the thing.
Was it fake? Well, they were living together.
Yeah, they were living together.
Sleeping in the same bed.
She had a fake, sleeping in the same bed. Yeah. Things happened. Yeah. And then they had a fake child. Or real child.
A real child.
A fake marriage.
Yeah, they have an extraordinary child. Her husband was involved with some really some challenging situations and has severe PTSD. Mm-hmm. And so she's been dealing with that for a lot of her life. But she spent the rest, and then she became, her second commercial cover was, she started a tech company that became very successful, and Twitter purchased it from her. And then she left the agency. She went to work for Twitter at a high level. And but somebody said to me the other day that they said, Amaryllis is the smartest woman I've ever met. And I said to them, no, she's the smartest person you've ever met. And she has just a capacity that, a mental capacity that I've never encountered in anybody. Mm-hmm. She's extraordinary. And the reason our campaign is doing so well is because of her.
Now, when you're deciding to run for president, obviously there's a lot of controversy between some of your family not supporting what you're doing because it hurts the Democratic Party. But when you're choosing who's going to run your campaign, was she the easy choice? Were there a lot of people kind of come out of the woodwork that were also supporting?
It was an impossible choice because there was no Democratic and no Republican consulting firm. Usually you go out and you hire one of these consultants who's run, campaigns like David Axelrod has a firm, and that's all it does. So you go and contract with one of these firms, and there's firms that are Democratic and there's firms that are Republican, and they usually don't cross the line. Mm-hmm. So we looked at all the Democratic firms, and none of them would work for us. Because if they did, they'd get blackballed by the party. Mm-hmm. And they also have union contracts, and they'd lose all their contracts. So anybody with experience was not going to work for us. I got Dennis Kucinich, who had run for president twice, to run my campaign initially. But then Amaryllis, who had really, really encouraged me to run from the outset, started taking larger and larger responsibilities, and it became clear how talented she was, and in every way. So, and running a campaign like this is what we have to do, where we have to get 2 million signatures, get on the ballot in every state. And the system was created to be insurmountable so that nobody could ever do it. The rules were written by the Republican and Democratic Party to make sure they didn't have any competition. Mm-hmm. So, for example, in the state of Maine, we have to go and get signatures in every town. There's 400 towns, and then you have to get those certified by the town clerk. So you need just an army of people, and you have a short period of time span to do that. Every state is different. In New York, you have 45 days to get, I think, 113,000 signatures. And in Texas, we had to get 130,000 in 40 days. We ended up getting 250,000. So we have a volunteer army. We have 50,000 people who we've deployed now. But Amaryllis is controlling all that. Mm-hmm. And it's just a monumental logistical accomplishment.
Forgive me I just kind of followed the X timeline. But obviously you've gotten a lot of these signatures, but then you'll see things where people are like, oh, they're not verified signatures or they're not counting. Like the
DNC, what we did, because they're going to challenge every signature. So we got double to triple the number of signatures we need. And, you know, some of them are volunteer gathered, but some of them we pay people to do for us, and they are responsible for validating them. And we have they have contractual obligations to make sure they're validated. The DNC is going to challenge us in every state. So they're going to sue us, and they're going to say that, you know, they're going to find some problem. But so far, we've won every lawsuit, and I'm very confident that we will win every lawsuit. You know, we were very, very careful. And so I am dead sure that we will be on the ballot in every state by end of August.
Was there ever a point for you gathering these signatures where you thought, man, I don't know if we're going to get this state, or that? Or were you pretty confident the entire time? You sound confident now, but was there ever a point?
I'm confident now. There were people who were telling us there was a couple of consultants, and it's a crazy industry, and that, you know, there's a whole cottage industry for ballot harvesting, and a lot of it is predatory and unscrupulous, and there's all kinds of dirty tricks that they do. They, you know, for example, they can get people to sabotage you. They'll get guys out in front of a Safeway or, you know, Piggly Wiggly or whatever, collecting signatures all day from customers, and one guy will wait till he's got a full page and then pretend to sign a signature, but he'll draw a line through the whole page, and that invalidates every signature. Oh, there's all kinds of little ways and big ways of attacking attacking our efforts, and all of those things have been done to us. But there were people from the beginning who said to us, "We can do this." And I didn't know whether to believe it or not, because, you know, you're meeting these people for the first time and you have no idea. But we ended up choosing the right people, and I think we're going to get it done.
Why do they make it so difficult? You think like it wouldn't be difficult for yourself, like being a Kennedy? Like, why does the DNC challenge everything? Like, why has it been such a difficult path?
I mean, the DNC didn't want me. I originally ran as a Democrat.
Right.
You know, I was born in the Democratic Party. My family has been Democratic office holders since the 1890s. My great grandfather, Honey Fitz, was the first Irish Catholic mayor of Boston, and, you know, my other great grandfather, Patrick Kennedy, was a political boss and a state senator in Massachusetts, and so my family was raised in the Democratic Party, and I could never imagine that I would ever leave the Democratic Party. But I felt like the Democratic Party left me, and when I tried to run, they passed all of these rules to make sure that I could not win. So, for example, I was campaigning very, very heavily in New Hampshire, and I was doing well, and the Democratic Party passed a rule that any candidate that steps foot into the state of New Hampshire, which I had already done, that all of their votes would count for President Biden. So that's one of the 60 things that they did to make sure that I could not, no matter what happened, I could not win the nomination. And it was not, it wasn't democratic. But Democrats are so terrified of Donald Trump that they kind of have tunnel vision, and they ignore a lot of the kind of anything that is done to make sure that Donald Trump is not president is okay. And I think that they've departed from a lot of the values that made that party so attractive to me growing up.
If you were to put yourself in this now Democratic Party shoes, where they're so tunnel visioned in on Donald Trump, why do they fear Trump so much? Because everyone's saying that each side is going to ruin democracy. But it seems like they're so focused on beating each other, as opposed to what you've said in one of your things after Kamala Harris was announced as the next running president for the Democratic Party, you said that, everyone's so focused on fighting each other and not focused on the American people. But where did this massive separation take place? Was it 2016 or was it happening much before then?
It's all kind of driven by a tribalistic impulse, and I think that the year it's been happening since the 1980s, but the big change here, I think, was 2010, and that was the year that the Supreme Court issued a decision called Citizens United, and the Citizens United we almost lost democracy in the 1880s and 1890s. There was, the country was really taken over after the Civil War by these giant robber barons. There'd never been concentrations of wealth like that in America. And you had these these very, very powerful families like John D. Rockefeller, who is as rich now as Elon Musk. I mean, as rich then as Elon Musk is now. Mm-hmm. He controlled, I think, about 70 or 80% of the oil production in the world, one man. You had the Morgans, the Carnegies, Andrew Carnegie. You had the Fricks and the Whitneys, these very, very powerful robber barons who sat on interlocking boards of the Sugar Trust, the Oil Trust, the Rail Trust, and they were really running our country. And at that time, there was no direct election of senators, so the public did not vote for the senators. The Senate was chosen by the legislatures. The legislatures were easy to buy. For a couple of $100, you could buy a state legislature. And it was said of the Pennsylvania state legislature at that time that they were the only legislature that was not for sale because John D. Rockefeller owned every one of them and he wasn't selling any of them. So that is, and then because they controlled the Senate, they controlled the political parties and they controlled who was going to become president. And there were no labor laws at that time. There were no labor unions. There was child labor. There were no child labor laws. There were no, women couldn't vote. Of course, blacks couldn't vote. And it really was not, it was no longer a democracy. And then you had a confluence of events occur where you had an agrarian movement called populism that was democratic, where farmers were rising up, and you had in the cities a group called the progressive movement, which was sort of liberal Republicans who were good government types, and they joined with the farmers, and they ended up electing Teddy Roosevelt, who was part of the oligarchy, but he was also idealistic and was willing to stand up, and he had the confidence to stand up to wealth. He wasn't scared or intimidated by it. And he became president. They passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, and they broke up the Standard Oil Company. They broke up all of these trusts. They passed child labor laws. They passed a 40-hour work week. They gave women the vote. They passed an income tax for the first time. At that time, if John D. Rockefeller paid the same tax as the poorest street sweeper. So they made wealthy people for the first time pay their share. They passed a corporate income tax, and the most important thing they did to restore democracy was in 2008, they passed a law making it illegal for corporations to donate to federal political candidates. That law helped restore American democracy. And, we became the exemplary democracy in the world, and everybody began imitating us. When we had the American Revolution in 1784, we were the only democracy in the world. By 1860, the beginning of the Civil War, there were 5, all of them modeled on us. By the time my uncle was president in 1960, there were 150 democracies, and pretty soon there would be 190, all modeled on the U.S. experiment. So we lived up to our promise to being the exemplary nation, and it was because we passed all these laws that righted democracy. The most important was that law that said corporations can't donate to a federal political candidate. In 2010, the Supreme Court issued a decision saying that any restrictions on companies giving to political candidates is a violation of free speech. That donation is actually speech, and that it's protected by the First Amendment, and any restrictions are illegal. That released a tsunami of corporate money into the political process. And so this election is going to cost, prior to 2010, a presidential election would cost maybe $1 billion all in. This one's going to cost $15 billion. And that money is all coming from billionaires and from, if you want to run for senator of New York, you got to get $300 million. That means you're on the phone all day with millionaires and billionaires, and you do not have time to talk to ordinary people. So both political parties became possessed by very wealth, great wealth, and by corporate control. And the only way they distinguish themselves is by pointing to the other one and saying, "You're evil. You're going to be the end of the republic." Mm-hmm. And so I think that's when the stakes really heated up, and people just became very, very tribalistic. I'm in this party. I'm not going to listen to anybody else. I'm not anything that's critical of my party. I'm going to ignore it. Anything that's, critical about the other guy, I'm going to believe it. And we're all in a position now where we're being told that if you vote for that guy, it's the end of the world. Mm-hmm. And it's not healthy for our country. And it's not true either. Yeah. We have some institutions in this country that are strong at present. Even if, like on January 6th, there were a bunch of people who went into the Capitol, but the U.S. military was not supporting them. This was not a coup d'etat against our country. It was not, in the sense that it really was a threat, an existential threat to American democracy. There were a lot of people with bad intention. There were a lot of people who committed crimes. They deserved to be in jail. But in terms of threatening the United States system of government, it's not true. That's not what it was. It was not good. It was bad. But it's been inflated to make it seem like it was that America, the American experiment with self-governance was hanging by a thread, and that just wasn't.
Yeah, right. We didn't put in this insurance policy before you stepped in the bus because I know we're going to have this little time, and then somebody's coming for you to sign a document, but. This podcast is not built for politics. Will and I, we don't know anything
let's
about
talk
politics.
About something other than politics.
Well, no. Yeah.
I have some questions for you.
Everything
it's the dullest subject.
It's one of those things though where it's so interesting, but because of the things you just mentioned, like you're talking about January 6th, like it was a bad thing. People should be in jail, but it wasn't as bad as everybody made it. And now we're looking at everything as this like life or death situation. When really it's taking a level-headed individual who knows the system very well to just say, hey, there are good things and bad things, but to say it's the worst thing or the best thing, that's where we're kind of losing ourselves in this country.
And we're losing the fact that we're all American and that the values that we share in common are much larger than these little sort of culture war issues and identity politics issues that are being used to keep us all apart. And in truth, the people who are benefiting from that are these big, the financial interests like BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, these big companies. Those three companies own 88% of the S&P 500. Mm-hmm. They're now buying all the, residential housing, and it's driving up housing costs in this country. They're buying all the farmland in our country and corporatizing agriculture, and they really are a genuine existential threat to democracy. And you look what they control both political parties. They're giving money to both. They control all the military companies. They control. BlackRock is the biggest owner of General Dynamics, of Northrop Grumman, of Boeing, of Lockheed. So they have the contract to destroy Ukraine, and they also have the contract to rebuild it. And they're making money both ways. Mm-hmm. And those are the people, and all of the policies that are designed to strip mine wealth from the American middle class and shift it upward to this new oligarchy of billionaires. The COVID lockdowns was 500 days of lockdowns under President Trump and President Biden. So they're both at fault. We created a billionaire a day in 500 days, and we shifted $4.3 trillion from the American middle class to this new aristocracy. And they closed down every business in this country, 3.3 million businesses, right? That meant 41% of the black-owned businesses will never reopen. And the companies that they kept open were the companies that were contributing to their parties. Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, all of these, these big tech companies, and Verizon, and the big communications concerns, the oil companies, the big ag companies. None of them shut down. They were all just raking in the money, and now, and now they don't have any competitive business from little people. And that was the backbone of the American experience, small business, and it's being just eviscerated. And we're all pointing each other and saying, you're not really American. And it's terrible. It's not a good outcome. And it allows these very, very sort of dark and powerful people to I think, tear the heart out of our country.
What would be like a practical strategy to start restoring the middle class? I feel like a lot of candidates always talk about restoring the middle class, but for people out there listening that struggle to buy a home, it's like if you're in Nashville and you're trying to buy a single family home, you're looking at several $100,000.
Yeah.
And it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to buy a home these days. So what is like a
ducks in the bus right now. Sherman, is that you back there?
That was me.
That was you?
Ducks are gone now.
Yeah.
Good. All right. No longer in season. That's all right.
What
That's
would
good.
be like a practical strategy that's understood by people listening to this?
I mean, well, we should pass a law that makes it illegal for these big investment firms to buy thousands of houses. That's what's happening. I mean, we all know people who've gone into escrow on a house, or they put down money, and and the housing prices are climbing. So 2 years ago, the average home in this country cost $215,000. Now it's over $400,000, and you're paying 7 or 8% interest, up from 3%. And nobody, I have 7 kids. They're all went to the best schools. My son Bobby is 40. He does have a house. He in Amaryllis. My 6 younger kids went to the best schools in our country. They have great jobs, and none of them can afford a home. So if they can't afford a home, there's nobody who can afford a home. Mm-hmm. And that generation is going to be the first generation in American history that is far worse off than their parents' generation, and they're not going to own a home. And home ownership is the core of the American experience. When I was a kid, we had, and my uncle was president, we were the wealthiest country. We owned half the wealth on the face of the earth in America. The American middle class was the greatest economic engine in the history of mankind. One of the reasons for that was because the industrial base of Europe got obliterated during World War II, but our factories were still cooking, and we were cranking out cars and television sets and all the things nobody else could build yet. We had no competition, but also, more importantly, we passed these extraordinary laws that said if you serve in the military, you got to own a home. You got the GI Bill, and you're going to get into a home. And the home at that point cost about $7,000, and the average income was about almost $6,000. So homes were very, very affordable. And once you own a home, everything changes, because now you care about your community, you care about your schools, you care about your police, you care about your transportation, you care about the health care, what the hospital looks like. You become part of an investment in your community, and you care about the appearance of your home and what your neighbor's home, and you're invested in it. But more importantly, you now have equity, which means you can borrow money. And if you can borrow money, then you can pursue your entrepreneurial impulses. And this is something nobody else in the world could do, have that widespread home ownership that allowed this ferment of entrepreneurial activity in our country where, if you can borrow money, I get a second mortgage on your home. You can build a yoga studio or a saloon or a bowling alley or a sporting goods store. And we started building communities based on that, on the capacity to borrow money. Well, now we've got a generation that cannot borrow money because they have no equity. And they are going to be on the sidelines of American capitalism. And we're going from an ownership society to a renter society. And when you do that, you go from being citizens to being subjects. That is that's the colonial system. It's the European aristocratic system that we fought a revolution to get, where the rich people owned all the land and they owned all the productivity. And your only choice was to work for them in one way or another. You rented your house from them. And we're going back to that now. And that we got to reverse that. And one of the ways to do it is to end the tax breaks that make it profitable for BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, Fidelity, Blackstone to buy all of our land, buy our housing. Every one of us knows somebody who went into escrow on a home, was about to sign a contract, and somebody comes in at the last minute with a cash offer 20% higher than the asking price and takes it off the table. And you're saying, who just stole my home?
Yeah.
And you go and it's an LLC with an ambiguous name.
In Tennessee, we call that California. We say everyone in California's coming in here, taking our houses.
That was happening.
Yeah. And they're all moving it from out west to here.
Yeah.
Well, that is true in Nashville, too. Sometimes it's human beings that are taking them. But a lot of times, it's all over the country. It's an LLC with this ambiguous name. And you follow the lines, you pull the strings, and it leads you back to BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard and these giant financial houses. And so our kids are now competing for the price of money against these behemoth corporations that even if you had the greatest credit rating in the world, BlackRock is paying 30% less than you for money. So of course they can afford that home when you can't, and then they'll rent it back to you, but they own it. And that is, what's happening, and we have to make it so they can't do that anymore. That's number one. I mean, number two, we have to stop printing money because that is what's driving inflation. And that is a tax on the poor. It's a tax on middle class. It's a tax on working people, and it's theft. And the reason we have it is to fund the wars. So we're addicted to wars. And the Ukraine war is just the latest example of a war we should have never got into. And that we're spending. We're spending $200 billion on that war. We're going to spend another $500 billion to rebuild Ukraine afterward. And we don't have the money to rebuild Lahaina and Maui. I was out there where they burned this incredible jewel of a city, in this historical city in Maui, and President Biden never visited there. Nobody has ever visited there, and they can't get. They were talking about passing a resolution renaming Lahaina to Kiev because they saw all the money going over to Ukraine, but we don't have the money to build an American community that is decimated. Our kids can't get into. We're in a crisis right now, and we don't have. We're like an alcoholic who's behind on his mortgage payments, and he's in the bar using the milk money to buy rounds for strangers. And that is the situation we're in right now.
With all, did you have something?
I was gonna say simple brain.
Go ahead.
Say we stop printing money. Say you pass this law to where the corporations stop buying the housing. Like, what does that domino effect look like?
Well, my simple brain thinks to that question, things get worse before they get better, right? Like it's darkest before the dawn. You stop printing money, you're going to hit a recession pretty quick because now there's no more money and we're slowly rebuilding. But dumb brain guy.
Well, here's what you do. You cannot just, you can't cut your way out of this debt. We have a $34 trillion debt now. The cost of servicing that debt, so the money we're paying on the interest, is now larger than our defense budget. Within 5 years, 50 cents out of every dollar that is collected in taxes is going to go to servicing the debt. Within 10 years, 100%. is not sustainable. But when you have a debt that size, you can't cut your way out of it. What you need to do is cut the things that are not adding to GDP. So the military, if you build a plane or a bomb, then you're sending it somewhere and blowing it up. And it's like digging a hole and then paying somebody to dig the hole and then to fill it up. It adds nothing to the economy.
Yeah.
There's no goods or services that are accruing to benefit quality of life in our country from building bombs and sending them abroad. Every $1 million we spend on the military creates 2 jobs in America. If you spent that same $1 million on childcare, it creates 18 jobs. So that's what you have to do. And that allows the mother to go, if she chooses, and I think we should honor motherhood, but the mother, if she chooses, should be able to leave the home and get a job and pay taxes and create wealth. And you grow the economy out of the deficit. You got to cut spending, some. You also have to reinvest the money that is misdirected into. And by the way, we're spending twice now what we were at the height of the Cold War in real dollars. So, and that money is not about national defense. It's about global domination. What I would do is what my grandfather wanted, what my Uncle Jack Kennedy did, which is to create Fortress America, arm ourselves to the teeth at home, make ourselves too expensive to conquer, have enough military power to protect the sea lanes, to protect neutral areas like the Antarctic, and to protect and then to fight 2 small confrontations in different theaters of the world, to punish bad behavior if we need to. But otherwise, and then take that other money and spend it making a lot of people's lives better, rebuilding our industrial base at home, which we don't have anymore. We can't fight a war anymore because we were able to fight World War II because we had these vast factories better than anybody else in the world that were creating automobiles, and we were able to make tanks and airplanes. And today, now, in the last 20 years, we've exported all of our industrial base to China. Oh, China can fight a war right now, and China can beat us in a war because it has an industrial base, and we no longer have one. We can't build tanks and ships and, a ship a day like we were doing during World War II. People aren't even realizing this, how weak our country is because we've allowed our industrial base to be exported, and we need to bring it back here and start rebuilding the American middle class. I don't think it gets worse. I think we start realigning that money, very quickly to things that actually improve people's lives. Like childcare is one of those things. That is one of the quickest ways to start rebuilding the economy. And then changing the rules to make it much easier for kids to get into houses, and buy their own house. I'll tell you something. When I was a kid, when I was in 1964, my uncle was killed in 63. And my father was shattered by that and really began coming out of it. It took him like 9 months to even, to begin to kind of function again. And we were invited by a anti-communist group to come to Poland, which was then a communist country. And we went to Poland, my brothers, 2 of the older siblings. I had 11 siblings, and I was on the 3rd. So me and the top 4 siblings went to Poland. The Polish government didn't want us there, and they made that clear. And they didn't want the Polish people to know we were in. And all of the people, all of news of our presence in the country was blacked out on the official news, which was, which all state-owned media. So, in fact, 2 days before we went to Sears and Roebuck, and we went to Woolworths in Washington, D.C., and we bought presents with my mom for kids that we were going to go to an orphanage and distribute these gifts. Everybody wanted American stuff at that point. Everybody wanted to. We're the only ones making transistor radios, making like automobiles, making blue jeans, and everybody wanted American stuff. So we went and bought toys and apparel, clothing for these kids. And we get to Warsaw. We go to the orphanage, and the Polish government had removed all the children because they didn't want us to have any contact with the Polish people. 2 days later, we went to Krakow to visit this cardinal, and the cardinal was a living saint. I grew up a Catholic. We said the rosary twice a day. We went to church twice a day. We prayed before and after every meal. We read the Bible every night. Very Catholic family. We read the lives of the saints. And the cardinal who was presided over the Cathedral of the Black Madonna, which is in Krakow Square, had stood up to the communists. He'd been jailed. He'd been tortured. He had endured those challenges with such piety and bravery that he inspired a religious resurgence in the Catholic Church in Poland. And everybody knew the minute he died, the Catholic Church was going to beatify him as a saint. So we knew as kids that we were going to meet somebody who was a living saint, which, to us, that was the biggest deal in our lives. And we went into Krakow. When we went through Krakow Square, we were the only car in the square, and there weren't too many cars in Poland at that time. And there was you actually, I think that's a picture of what happened then. We went into Krakow Square, and there was nobody in it. We were the only car there. We met for a couple of hours with the cardinal, and in fact, a young priest made us chicken sandwiches in the kitchen when we were waiting for the cardinal, and that priest later became Pope John Paul II. But we met with the cardinal, then we come out in Krakow Square, and that crowd, 1 million people are waiting for us. And the word had spread through word of mouth, and they had shut down all of the shops in Krakow. And the entire population of the city had come out to see our family, to see an American, because they loved our country. And we were stuck in this sea of people. The embassy limo couldn't move. My father pulled us all out of the back window of the car onto the roof, and we stood there and watched this huge crowd. And, you could see me there with my little shorty shorts.
Photo right here?
Yeah. And
young Robert, man, that's awesome.
And they started singing to us Stolat, which means may you live forever. And then they started singing this anthem to us, which the ambassador said that song is illegal for them to sing. You go to jail if you sing that song. And the whole crowd was singing it. And there was just tears flowing down their faces, and they were reaching up. You could see them to touch. I was signing autographs, this little 10-year-old kid. My father, they were reaching up to touch.
Yeah, just learned cursive.
Yeah.
Make sure you got your eyes.
So, on that trip, because these people loved America. And on that trip, we went to England, we went to France, we went to Germany, we went to Italy, Greece. Everywhere we went, the same thing happened. There's these spontaneous crowds coming out of nowhere just because they were so proud of America. And, my uncle had made a commitment. He said when he told his best friend, his best friend Ben Bradley had said to him, "What do you want on your gravestone?" And he said, my uncle said immediately, he kept the peace. He said the primary job of a president of the United States is to keep the country out of war. My uncle had been in the war. Two of my uncles died in the war, including his brother 20 years later, 30 years later. If I mentioned Uncle Joe's name to my grandfather, he'd burst into tears because he was the golden child. He was the oldest brother, and he was the guy that they had invested all this promise in. There's pictures of him just before he died. He volunteered for a suicide mission, and his plane was blown up. It was the first remote-controlled flying bomb, and he flew it. He was killed. My other uncle, who was, married to my aunt, to Kit Kennedy, also died. in the first days of the war, my Uncle Jack had been lost at sea. His PT boat was cut in two in a fog in the Blackett Straits off the Solomon Islands by a Japanese destroyer. And he had been on the Harvard swim team. He had swum 6 miles. One of his crew had been badly burned. 2 were killed. He swam 6 miles with a lanyard in his teeth, dragging this guy who had been badly burned. And then they hid out on an island for 10 days, and then 2 Solomon Islanders came to that island, and they were collecting coconuts, and they hated the Japanese because they were the colonizers. My uncle wrote his coordinates onto a coconut, and they buried it under a pile of coconuts, and those Solomon Islanders went 30 miles across the ocean and gave the coconut to the British headquarters. My uncle was rescued, but he was the only president who's ever won the Purple Heart. So he was a warrior, and he wanted to keep the country out of war. Incidentally, I'll tell you a funny story. During his inauguration, I was 7 years old, and he invited the captain of that Japanese destroyer that had sunk him to his inauguration as an honored guest. And I got to meet him then, that he was the guy who sank Uncle Jack and almost killed him. And he was an admiral in the Navy. But my uncle also invited the 2 Solomon Islanders who had rescued him. And the British governor of the Solomon Islands was embarrassed by their appearance because they had never worn shoes, and they were wearing loincloths, and they didn't speak any English. So he chose 2 kind of presentable Solomon Islanders and sent them instead, some of the civilized ones. Yeah. And my Uncle Jack was so pissed off at him, and he never got to see him again. But about 10 years ago, my little brother Max went to the Solomon Islanders with Robert Ballot, who is the undersea explorer who he discovered the Titanic, right? And they were looking for PT-109. And they found it. They found like an engine, a little small part of an engine block. Those PT boats were made of plywood, so nothing's left of the original hull. But they found a little piece of it. But while they were in the Solomon Islanders, my brother met those 2 guys. They're still alive. And they were both wearing T-shirts that said, "I rescued John F. Kennedy."
That's so awesome.
And my brother said when they were introduced to him, they both burst into tears. They knelt on the ground and were kissing his feet, which was a cultural thing. And that, he was crying and they were crying. He just said it was incredible. But anyway, my uncle knew, he resisted all. They tried to get him to go into Laos. In 1961, he refused. They tried to get him there. There's the guys. That's a great picture. Awesome. They tried to get him to go into Vietnam, and he refused. They tried to get him to go into Berlin. They twice tried to get him to go into Cuba, and he wouldn't do it. He never sent a combat troop abroad to die. And a month before he died, in October 22nd, 1963, he ended up sending 16,000 advisors to Vietnam to teach them how to. They're helicopter pilots and they were Green Berets. Mm-hmm. Under the rules of engagement, they weren't supposed to fight, but they did anyway, and for reasons you can imagine. And he heard that one of them got killed, and he asked Walt Rostow, who was one of his aides, to give him a casualty list of all of the American casualties. And Walt Rostow came back, and there were 75 Americans that died. And he said, "That's too many. I'm bringing them all home." And that afternoon, he signed an order called National Security Order 263, ordering all U.S. military personnel home from Vietnam by 1965, with the first 1,000 coming home in December of 1963. Well, that would have been 6 weeks later. Mm-hmm. 30 days to the day after he signed that order, he was murdered. And then a week after that, President Johnson remanded the order. Johnson sent 250,000 troops, which they'd been trying to get my Uncle Jack to do. And my father ran against the war in '68, and he was killed running against the war. Martin Luther King, 2 months before my dad died, Martin Luther King had become a peace activist. He was killed, and then Nixon became president, and sent over 560,000 Americans. 56,000 of them never came home. We killed 1 million Vietnamese. My cousin George Skakel died over there during the Tet Offensive, and again, it was a war that should have never happened. My uncle knew that, but because of that, because of his commitment, he said, I don't want African kids and Asian kids and Latin American kids, when they hear about the United States of America, to think of a guy in a uniform with a gun. I want them to think of a Peace Corps volunteer. I want them to think of the USAID program and the Alliance for Progress, which was supposed to put America, on the side of the poor and help grow middle class in this country, and not, be giving weapons to everybody. And he succeeded in doing that. And because of that, there's now more statues to my uncle, more universities named after, more parks, more roads, avenues, boulevards in Africa, Asia, and Latin America than any other U.S. president in history, and probably more than all of them combined. And that's a good foreign policy, because, he wanted to project economic power abroad, but not military power. And the strategy of projecting military power has made us now, enormously unpopular. And it's pushed Russia and China and Iran together in a terrible, terrible alliance for the United States. It's created the BRICS, organization, which is now about to destroy the U.S. dollar as the global reserve currency. And none of that is good for our country. It's all bad, and it's all because we lead with the military rather than leading
Instead
with
of economics.
Yeah.
I hate to interrupt. Yeah.
We got to do the notary thing. But by the way, your storytelling ability is incredible. I know that all of our mouths are wide open listening to you tell these incredible stories. First time I've ever heard it. It's an honor. It really is awesome. It is awesome. Let's get this notary in here, and we'll start back up.
What's up, boys? We interrupt this episode to bring you Shady Rays. Shady Rays has a brand new premium polarized pair of sunglasses that is part of their newly anticipated Rivals collection. It is a single polarized lens in the Barstool blue with the stool sign and all the logos specific to Barstool, the boys. Also, if you're just a casual, you want a casual pair of shades, they also have the classic style too. They have hundreds of different styles. All you have to do is go to shadyrays.com and the boys got you for a generous 35% off. Use code BOYS. That's shadyrays.com with code BOYS, and you get 35 off any pair of sunglasses in the stores. Highly recommend their new Rivals collection, their new premium polarized single lens. But do your thing. ShadyRays.com, code BOYS.
You probably have my
I think
poster
you
in your
were
room.
after. Was it still called RFK when you were there?
Yes. When did it stop?
I don't know. I forgot when they closed it. But we had a. My mom was. I mean, these are.
Hey, and we're back on. We're starting to cover that he is a football guy.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up with the Redskins, particularly because they played it. They renamed the stadium after my dad when my dad was killed in '68, and my mother, Edward Bennett Williams. Here I am catching a football thrown, and I did catch that pass, by the way, by my uncle, who had a beautiful arm, and my dad was the smallest guy on the most successful Harvard football team in history. And, they love football, and so they named the RFK Stadium after my dad, and we always had Redskins at our house, and we had the Green Berets. I grew up also with a lot of Green Berets at our house. My uncle started the Navy SEALs, and he allowed the Pentagon wanted to take the beret away from the Green Berets, they thought because it was, you know, it wasn't, they viewed it as a kind of defiance or something. And my uncle allowed them to keep it, and they were always very grateful to him, and he's kind of their patron present to this day. And we had Major Ruddy, who was the head of the Green Berets, was at our house all the time. They were firing grappling. We had a 4-story house in Virginia, and they would come to our house and do these demonstrations. They would fire grappling hooks up onto the roof, and they would come, you know, climb up there and then rappel down. I went to Fort Bragg, and I also went to their training camp in El Yunque, which is down in Puerto Rico, when I was a kid. But they also built a full-scale obstacle course at our house, like a military obstacle course in one of the pastures, you know, at our house. And my mom every year would have a pet show. It was like a benefit for an orphanage in Washington, D.C., and people come, thousands of people come, and you had to bring a pet to get into the pet show. There was a lot of funny stories that happened there, but the Redskins would come and run the obstacle course, and they had, you know, competitions on their obstacle course every year. And Joe Theismann became very, very close to my mom, and I grew up with Sonny Jurgensen, and you know, all these old guys.
Were they your team? Was that
your
team
that
growing
was
up?
my team growing up.
What do you think about them changing the name to Commanders?
Gotta go back. What do you think?
I think it needs to be HTTR. Hail to the Redskins.
Hail to the Redskins.
Yeah, HTTR is the acronym that
what would you call them?
Redskins.
Oh, the Redskins.
Yeah.
Like they would say, like, HTTR would be like their hashtag, or their
HTTR is like the fan base. Hail to the Redskins. Hail to the Redskins. Their fight song and everything.
Yeah.
And they obviously changed the name to the Commanders, and that's always like a topic of discussion in the football world.
Yeah.
It
is. You can understand why the name a little iffy, but
I have problems with. I don't know. I have problems with a lot of that stuff, and I've worked on indigenous issues all my whole life. 20% of my career has been working for Indians, and negotiating treaties in Latin America, in the United States, and in Canada, and in litigating on behalf of Indians against big polluters and stuff. So I'm very sensitive to those issues, but I was sad to see the change.
That was well done. That was a great answer. Navigating those waters. That's a hot topic.
I don't know if I navigated it.
Are you?
It's a tough deal. It can be hard sometimes.
Are you a college football guy? Or are you more pro?
More NFL.
More NFL.
Yeah. My wife is a rabid fan, and she was asked by. She went to University of Central Florida, and my dad. You know what's interesting? My dad, because I'm watching this picture of my dad, and I think that's a Hopi Indian that he's with, and we went to all the reservations when I was growing up, to the Comanches, to the to Cherokee, to Mohawk, to Hopi, to Navajo. Everywhere we went, he would take us to a reservation. There were always Indians at our house. He had a bunch of Eskimos. We had a freak snowstorm in Washington one time, and there were a bunch of Eskimos visiting my father at the Justice Department. He brought them all home for lunch, and they built this huge igloo in our backyard. It was very, very cool.
That's awesome.
But my father, in 1968, he went out to the Pine Ridge Reservation, where I've spent a lot of time in South Dakota, and he spent a whole day there. There were 20,000 white people waiting for him in Rapid City, and his aides were saying, "You got to go because Indians don't vote anyway." And he said, "I don't care." And he spent the whole day out there. He saw a group of Sioux living in an automobile, a family living in a burned out hulk of an automobile, and it made him cry. It's the only time other than when his brother died, that anybody had ever seen him cry. And that word spread on the reservation. And a few weeks later, when he on the last day of his life, he won the state of South Dakota because he got virtually 100% of the vote on the Pine Ridge and on also all the other Sioux reservations, Rosebud, Standing Rock in North Dakota. But he won all of the Sioux vote, and it put him over the edge. So the last day of his life, he won the most rural state in our country, which was South Dakota, and the most urban, and it was because of the Indian vote. But when he was at Pine Ridge that time, this is 1968, he met a woman who had been at Custer's Last Stand. Oh, that always impressed me a lot because Custer's Last Stand sounds like it was, a long time ago, but it was 90 years before, it was in 1876. So, and the whole Sioux Nation was at the Little Bighorn River having a powwow. So there were men, women, and children, and this little girl was a little girl living in a teepee when they went out and killed Custer. And she then met my father when he was running for president, 90 years later.
That's unbelievable. You just talked about your uncle and your father and both of them being assassinated. And the common denominators that you said and with the stories you were telling us and everything is like they were standing up for something that they wanted them to do. And now you sit here trying to be the next president of the United States. And there's so many things that you're standing up for against these big companies who, if you are elected, you're going to hurt their pockets a lot. Like where all this stuff going on, like Trump, there's an assassination attempt on him. You just now get Secret Service. Like why is this so big to you? Why is this so important that you're willing to put your life at risk?
I mean, my whole life has been kind of, committed to our country. And, I just saw it. I felt like, the country was going off the rails and that the people who should know what America is supposed to look like they had forgotten or something. And I felt like somehow all the people that I trusted to take care of business were not taking care of it. And that I kind of had a unique ability to remind people what our country is supposed to look like, that we're supposed to be an exemplary nation, that we're supposed to protect our Constitution, that there's not supposed to be censorship of free speech, even during pandemics. You're not supposed to close down all the churches. You're not supposed to close down the businesses. You're not supposed to suspend jury trials, all the things that the Constitution guarantees us. And then, we're turning into a warfare state, and it's destroying the American middle class. And I just see everything. I want my kids to have the same love for our country and hope for their futures that I grew up with. It was a poll taken in 2013 where they polled American young people between 18 and 35. And they asked them, are you proud of the United States? And 85% said yes. And the same poll taken 5 months ago, only 17% said yes.
Oh, shit.
Somehow in the last, in the administrations, the last two administrations, you have an entire generation of kids who has lost their pride in America, who are not proud to be Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And you guys grew up proud to be Americans, right? Oh, yeah. Proud of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is heartbreaking. That my kids are part of that generation. My kids are proud, but they're part of a generation that's not only not, lost their pride in our country, but they've lost their hope for their own futures. And, I just feel like I got to do something.
Right. In the last 2 weeks, obviously, it's been a crazy last couple of weeks. But in your opinion, like what's happening with the Biden administration? He seemed excited to run. Then all of a sudden they, report that he is falling out. Kamala Harris is now going to take over. What is kind of unfolding on that side?
Let me ask you guys something, because you're not focused on politics, but didn't you?
I'm scared with this question.
What?
Hey, you're making me draw a line, and my whole thing is playing both sides of the fence.
This isn't like Democrat or Republican, but I was not surprised by the bad performance in the debate because I was watching just YouTube videos of all of these, revealing videos that indicated that President Biden was having cognitive impairments, that he was having some kind of cognitive degeneration. And so I always thought that he's going to get the debate's going to be a bad night for him because he's okay when he was talking with a teleprompter, but he never did unscripted encounters with voters, and he didn't do debates, he didn't do town halls, all the things that politicians normally do. They kept him from doing that. He had fewer press conferences than any president in history during this term. Oh, I was not surprised. And it was kind of weird to me that people acted surprised, and then the whole country pivoted against him. The whole media empire pivoted against him and said, oh, wow, this is a huge shock. And I'm like, I was shocked. The thing that shocked me is that people are acting shocked. So I don't. There's no point to this. It's not,
honestly,
it's not a good story. But
I feel like it was. People weren't necessarily shocked. You're kind of tuning in for the entertainment factor of what's about to go down.
Yeah.
Because you expected something.
Yeah.
Like it was like. I said this the other day that it was every time I saw him on TV, it was like watching your 5-year-old play on a jungle gym for the first time. You're like, oh God, something bad could happen. So,
what are your emotions when you see Biden and his cognitive function? Because I listened to your Rogan podcast, I listened to you on Dr. Phil, and you've had a long-standing relationship with him. What kind of person was Joe Biden 20, 30 years ago compared to now?
He was, well, I look at him now and I feel like he's, just that he's old and people age differently. But I know people who have dementia and I have relatives who have dementia, and he acts like somebody who has, dementia. Oh, the Joe Biden I knew was a very, very sweet man. After my cousin Cara died, and my uncle had passed. My uncle Teddy had already passed, and then his daughter passed. And Biden, without saying anything to anybody, showed up at her funeral and her memorial and stayed through the whole thing, and spent the night with the family and all that. And he didn't do it. He did it just because he had compassion. Mm-hmm. Oh, I felt like he was that guy. I felt like he was from Scranton, Pennsylvania, that he was on the side of working people. And I mean, he always had problems with words. And he had some challenges during his lifetime with saying things that weren't true. But I thought, generally speaking, that he was, committed to high ideals. And he's a guy who spent 50 years in service of the country. And of course, there's benefits to being in political power. There's also tremendous sacrifices, and I think both Republicans and Democrats who make that choice, that it's not an easy way to live. It's a really difficult way to live, and most people, I think, could do, other stuff that, and so I respect anybody who makes that choice, even if I don't agree with them. I think that's my best.
Yeah. This twisted question, this final question, is brought to you by Twisted Tea, a refreshing hard iced tea made with real brewed tea and 5% alcohol, full of flavor and very refreshing. It goes down super smooth because there's no carbonation, which makes it easy to drink all day long. Twisted Tea feels fun and celebrates extreme fandom on game day, and it is the perfect beverage for game day, whether tailgating in the parking lot or watching at home with your friends. Twisted Tea is there to turn up your game day. Keep it twisted with the boys and grab a refreshing Twisted Tea today. Here is the Twisted Question with RFK Jr. There were rumors of Aaron Rodgers being your VP at one point in time. Was there ever a formal invite to him?
I talked to him about it. Yeah, I talked to him about it. I asked him, would he do it? And I really love Aaron Rodgers. I think he's got tremendous courage, and he does, he's committed to, he's a guy who does critical thinking, and he's somebody who, you guys don't think a lot about politics. He's thinking about it all the time. He's, skeptical of authority. And he has a very, very interesting mind. He's fascinating to talk to. And and I think he would, and he's curious about everything. My uncle, when he first met Jackie, who, he ended up marrying, she was a reporter, I think it was for the Herald, and she was doing an interview with him, and she asked him what he thought his best quality was, and she assumed that he was going to say courage, because his own history of demonstrating physical bravery, and then he had written a book called Profiles in Courage that was about moral courage among political leaders in our country, of political leaders who had made choices that benefited our country and ruined their careers, and knowingly did that. And he wrote it's a series of stories about these people who torched their own careers. And he had won a Pulitzer Prize for that book. So Jackie assumed that he was going to probably say that courage was his strongest, his best, but he said curiosity. He said that was his greatest attribute, his greatest, the virtue that was most important to him politically. And I understand why he said that, because it's one of the ways that he was able to keep peace, because he was curious about how Khrushchev saw the world. He was curious about how Castro saw the world. He ended up with Khrushchev having this extraordinary, we had, during that time when my uncle came into office, the CIA didn't know anything about what was happening in the Kremlin, because there was a mole in Langley. And as soon as they got a spy, a high-level person in the Kremlin would know within days, and they'd kill the guy. And so it was just a dark space for them. And the way that they explained what was happening to the Kremlin to my uncle, that it was kind of monolithic, and they all were bent on world domination, and that they had a plan, and they were all working together. My uncle was like, I don't think that that's possible. Mm-hmm. He said, it's got to be like Boston, where they all, are trying to stab each other, and they're fighting with each other, and they have different worldviews, and there's some good ones and some bad ones. And he was really curious about it, and he went to meet, there's a picture here of him in his first meeting with Khrushchev in Vienna. And that was at the beginning of his presidency, and he was very, very hopeful of finding a path to peace with Khrushchev. Khrushchev rebuffed him, and Khrushchev was very bombastic, and he gave him a lecture on U.S. imperialism, and said that he wasn't scared of the United States, and that the Russians had won the war, not the United States, against the Nazis, which was pretty true, and that they could take any punishment. They weren't scared of anything, and sent my uncle away really discouraged. And but Khrushchev was an interesting guy, because he had been in the war. He'd been a general, and he was at the worst battle in the war, which was Stalingrad, where they were eating each other literally. There was widespread cannibalism. They ate the dogs, they ate the horses, and then they started eating each other. And he saw things that nobody, just terrible, terrible things. He did not want another war. And Russia had lost 1 out of every 7 of its citizens during that war. The Russians just, took the full brunt of Hitler. And then after the Cuban Missile, the confrontation at Checkpoint Charlie, there were 2 tank battalions that were facing each other off on when the Russians were building the Berlin Wall, because all of the Germans from the part of Russia that was occupied, East Germany, which was occupied by the Soviets, they all wanted to get out to the U.S. side, and so they were coming over, and so the Russians solved that problem by building a wall, this terrible wall. It lasted till 1993. And during that period, a U.S. general named Lucius Clay put bulldozer plows on the front of tanks and then went to plow down the wall. And a Russian tank division met him on the other side at a crossing called Checkpoint Charlie. And we were moments away from nuclear confrontation. And my uncle sent a message to Khrushchev, and Khrushchev said, "My back is to the wall." He said, my uncle said, "We got to solve this. We cannot start bombing each other." And Khrushchev said, "My back is to a wall. I cannot go farther back." And what he was saying to my uncle is, I'm surrounded by people here who want this, and I'm limited in what I agree with you. I don't want this war, but you got to help me somehow. And they ended up helping each other to solve that crisis. And after that, they developed this relationship of trust. And when I was growing up, my parents there was a Soviet spy he worked for the GRU, which is the military spy agency, and for the KGB. And this was the time the first James Bond films started coming out. So, we knew all about Russian spies because they were in the James Bond films. Mm-hmm. And so we were very excited when my parents began bringing this guy to our house. His name was Georgy Bolshoi. And they had met him at the Soviet embassy at a party, and he was very charming. He was kind of a squat. He was a real athlete. He could climb a rope with his legs stuck out like that. He would do push-up contests with my father. Mm. He could do the Cossack dancing where, he'd get on the table, which is very hard to do.
It looks very difficult. With my knees, there'd be no shot.
No
exactly.
chance. Well, you had an ACL.
Yeah, an ACL, then another one 2 years later.
Yeah, so you can't do it. But
no, can't do it. But I can watch and appreciate them, other people doing it. I know we've got to get you out of here in just a few minutes.
Anyway, I'll just finish telling this real quick.
Sorry.
Which is that Georgy Bolshoi, my parent, the State Department hated the fact that my parents were were having a Soviet spy at their home. We all loved him, and they loved him because he was really joyful and he was buoyant. But Khrushchev trusted him, and my uncle trusted him. And Khrushchev began smuggling letters to my uncle. And the first letter he sent him, and he sent him in a New York Times. It was Georgy Bolshoi folded the letter into New York Times and smuggled it to my father. And the first letter apologized for what he had done in Vienna and said, we got off to a bad start. And he said, I'm sitting in my dacha in the Black Sea and I'm watching children play and I'm thinking, we don't have a right to kill these children. And my uncle then sent him back a letter saying, I'm sitting in Hyannisport watching my nieces and nephews play with my children. And, they have a right to grow up to write poetry and to play baseball and to, be political leaders in this. And if we blow it for them, it's our crime. Mm-hmm. And they started writing each other, and they hid it from their own intelligence apparatus, they were both realized they were surrounded by war hawks in the intelligence apparatus and the military, and that they were isolated in their own governments, and that they found each other, and that they had to keep the countries out of the war. And and they wrote 26 letters to each other. the last one was sent the day by Khrushchev, the day that my uncle died, and they were making plans to end the arms race altogether, get rid of all the nuclear weapons, and to join each other in making the world better for humanity. And Khrushchev was deposed right after my uncle was murdered, but it was because of my uncle's capacity for curiosity that he just could not believe that Khrushchev was this sinister, evil character that had been painted, right. That he had to be more multidimensional than that.
Yeah, been portrayed as. Honestly, I know we've got to get you out of here, but I wish we could. Is that how we want to spend our last 5 minutes?
Well, I don't know if we have 5. Do we have 5? 2?
We have 2 minutes. So we have 2 minutes. Would love to have literally 2 more hours, like just listening and sitting and kind of learning about what it's like growing up as a Kennedy, your uncle, your dad, the things they've gone through, the things you've gone through has been amazing. And I know that with these long form podcasts, you really believe it's a new form of media where people get to learn different views instead of just the mainstream media. So people that are listening to you right now for the first time, what would be the message that you would want to send to them?
I mean, I would ask them, go look at our website at Kennedy24.com, and don't vote out of fear. Don't vote because you think that guy is going to end the republic, so you have to vote for your guy or this guy. If Americans vote for hope, I have the highest favorability rating of any candidate who's running, higher than President Trump, higher than than Kemal, much higher than either of them. If people voted for the person they want to vote for, I'll win. Most Americans now are being taught to vote out of fear. If you vote for Bobby, it's a wasted vote. So you got to vote for Trump or Biden. And 85% of Americans don't want to vote for either. And my job is, over the next 4 months, is to convince people to vote out of hope and out of inspiration and out of, belief in our country rather than out of fear. So I would ask people to go to Kennedy24.com. Look at our, positions on the issues. I don't feed into the vitriol, to the marginalization. I don't, the polarization. I don't attack President Trump or President Biden. I talk about their issues where they're wrong, but personally, I don't attack them. And I've tried to find the issues the values that unite us all as Americans rather than focusing on the culture war issues that are used to keep us at each other's throats. And, those landscapes of things that we share in common in America are so much broader than the little stuff that, is orchestrated to keep us apart.
Mm-hmm. Man, thank you for coming on. This has been an honor. This is obviously a big year for our country, for Nebraska going after the Big Ten title. And we really appreciate you coming on.
We do appreciate you coming on. This has been a very cool experience.
I'm still waiting for year 10.
Stop.
Hey, you already know that's all we needed.
Robert, you just lost a vote for me, man. That's tough.
Yes, sir.
That is
yes,
terrible.
sir. We needed that, boys.
Man, who plugged that in your ear before you walked in?
He's a fan. Washington. He's a Washington.
Come on, man.
You know what I mean?
He's got a good team. He's got a good group of boys behind him, huh?
He watched the boy. He watched the boy back when I played for Washington.
Yeah. Captain.
Yeah, captain.
Captain of the team.
Yeah.
We do appreciate it.
This
is awesome. This bus started in a gravel parking lot on a hot spot and stealing power from an RV company. And to be sitting here with you is pretty cool. So we really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's really fun talking to you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for the stories. It was unbelievable.
We need to get out on that obstacle course, it sounds like.
Yeah. Kennedy Compound, next podcast.
Yeah.
We'll be there. Appreciate you guys. Subscribe, rate 5 stars. We'll talk to you soon.
I know you guys got to drill fast. Could we do one team photo?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One team photo, one squad photo.
Team photo sounds great.
Can you guys grab the 2 guys that are stuck over there? I know they're. Do we do it in here?